Welcome to Audio Path, where we take a real look at making a living in music.
Ever wonder what it's like to make a living in music outside of the big industry hubs? We're here to pull back the curtain with raw, unfiltered conversations about the ups, downs, and everything in between.
Join us, John Kimbrough,
And Trent Harrison,
as we share real-world insights, experiences, and stories from behind the scenes in the music industry. Whether you're an artist, audio nerd, or you just love music, we've got something for you.
this is Audio Path, where the hustle is real and the passion runs deep.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Audio Path Podcast.
Here we are.
Here we are. I'm John. This is Trent.
Hey.
So glad you decided to join us for episode number 11.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe we're already at 11, man.
I know.
It's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah,
Been
things are happening.
Having a good time with it.
And we've got a unique episode, I would say.
Yeah.
This
Maybe
is
a little juicy.
this is a little bit of a juicy one. It's a fresh one. And so, Trent, what are we going to be talking about today?
So we're talking about dealing with difficult artists or clients, right? And basically like ways to navigate certain situations that may have gone sideways for whatever reason. And then kind of I think things I want to try to point out is maybe some red flags that you could look out for to avoid getting into a tough situation or a difficult situation, right?
Yeah.
I have recently been through a personal situation a business situation in the studio personally with an artist that we had to part ways, and it, like I said, it kind of went sideways. And there's a number of reasons I think why it happened that I can see, and some of them are my fault for sure. Some of them were their fault. I think it was a pretty equal kind of thing. We both made mistakes, right? And I'm the first one to admit, I'm not perfect and I make mistakes just like anybody else. And sometimes, even though I've been doing this for 15, 16 years now, I still will find myself into a tough situation because you're dealing with people.
You are, yep.
And everyone has different personalities, especially when you're dealing with a band. Then you're dealing with a band personality and then individual members' personalities, which can get tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those people you might jive with really well. Some of them might not be your people.
Totally.
You know?
And, before we really get into this, just, full disclosure to you, the listener, I knew this happened to Trent. I have not heard the story. So I'm literally going to hear it for the first time with you here. All I knew is like, hey, I know we have that episode coming up. I've got a story for it. And
yeah.
So
yeah, this just happened a couple weeks ago to me, and I thought it would be fresh and good to share to, like I said, hopefully help some of our listeners maybe avoid this situation or situations that are similar to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Trent, thanks for your openness and being willing to share it here with us.
Sure.
And hopefully we can all learn something from it. Last thing I'll say before I really, want to hear the whole thing from you is, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
I've made plenty of them.
Yeah.
In my time, and in my career, which is a similar length to yours. And I think the most important thing is that we just learn from them.
That's right.
And we learn from the mistakes of other people. And, we hear about things and it informs what we do next time.
Exactly. And that's one of the main takeaways, even though I haven't even gotten into it yet, but that's going to be one of the main takeaways that I just want to impart on people is that I've chosen now to look at this situation as a learning experience, and a costly one, but one that, I won't forget and that I can, go back to in my mind and say, hey, if we're starting to get close to something that resembles this, pump the brakes and maybe think about an alternate path, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the end, even though it was hard and difficult going into it and through it, I think there's a silver lining, and just like there is in most things.
Yep.
So,
All right, Trent. So get us
yeah,
into it, man.
without further ado, let me tell you kind of what happened. So, I've been working with this band, and this is a bit of a long story. So, I apologize ahead of time if this episode goes a little longer than our usual ones, but it's just the way that it's going to have to be. I'm going to try to condense it and not focus, get stuck on the details too much. But this goes back to, I think, 6 to 8 months ago. Gosh, it's probably closer to a year ago whenever we first made contact. And this band that I was working with was recording an EP. I think it was an EP at the time, in another studio around. And they got to a point that they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we want you to do some mixing. We've been working on this EP with such and such, and we, wanted to take it to you to maybe get it mixed, and we're already thinking that we might want to get it mastered somewhere else. We just kind of want to, you know, kind of spread it out and have different ears on it." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's very common,
Mm-hmm.
very normal thing. So should be cool, right?" They sent me the rough cuts of like what they had at the time. Um, and they wanted to do 2 songs. Come to find out, I didn't know this was actually an EP before I was involved in this,
Mm.
and some of the songs got cut,
Ah.
and it ended up only being 2 when it came to me, but there's reasons for that, which I'll get into later. So, they bring me 2 songs, they send them to me. I'm like, "All right, this is cool. This is kinda my jam." They're like an indie rock band. Like, indie rock is one of the 2 sides of the coin that I flip to quite often, right? I do kind of Americana folk music, and then I do indie rock kinda jam kinda stuff, right? So, they're right up my alley, and, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm into this. I'd be happy to work with you guys. Why don't we set up a meeting? You guys can come into the studio. We'll sit down and talk, and, we can meet each other and just kinda, lay out the process," right? So that happened. It all went well. They're younger guys. They're kinda just getting out of college, and, so they're a little inexperienced. This is kind of their first. They did have some music out already, but all of this has happened in a very short span of time. Like, I think they released their first single a couple months prior and then immediately went back into recording more.
Oh wow. Okay.
So this is like, so they're still, they have put music out, but they still don't have a lot of experience because it's all kind of jammed into a short window, right? So they've gone through the process like that before. And anyway, so I checked that song out and I'm like, okay, yeah, it fits kind of, the same kind of thing. Um, of course, they come to the studio, we meet, seem to get along well. Didn't really see any reasons why it would be a bad, you know, partnership in that regard. Now, there is a caveat here that there was a small hurdle that we needed to overcome in order to make these first 2 songs happen. Like I said, they were working in another studio in town, and they of course needed to get the files from that other engineer, that other
Right. Right.
studio in order for me to be able to mix it, right? So I know this other studio engineer. We're friends, and I didn't want to step on his toes and didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. I value my relationship with him, and I don't know this band at all. So so of course at that point there's a little bit of a loyalty going on. I don't want to. I mean, I like their music and I'd enjoy the gig, but I don't want to, hinder or hurt my relationship with that other engineer just for that, right?
Right.
And keep that in mind whenever you're out there with that. Like,
Yeah.
don't step over your colleagues or, uh, kind of throw anyone under the bus in order to maybe try to get a gig or something that you maybe want, because it'll probably come back to bite you.
It does every time.
Yeah, it really does. The music industry, even though of course it's global, worldwide, it's a small world
It is
out
small.
there, and
Yeah.
word will get around that if you're doing something shady or you're really not respecting your fellow engineer or artist or anything, it'll get out there for sure. So I had to talk to the band at that point. I was like, hey, I don't want to take anything away from such and such engineer. I need you guys to talk to him and make sure that because at this point they were just exploring options. And I don't think he knew that at all. And so I was like, you need to. I asked him, I was like, well, do you have the files? And they're like, oh no, but we'll have to talk to such and such and get the files, and then we'll get back to you with that. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, you guys need to talk to him and make sure that he's okay with this.
Yeah.
Because he might not be. And if he's upset with this, then I don't want any part of it. Whether he has, at the end of the day, he doesn't have a whole lot of choice. Unless you haven't paid him, he can't really refuse.
Right.
But if it's gonna be a hurtful, or if he's upset with the situation for whatever reason, then that's where I don't want to be a part of it.
Totally.
Yeah. And so we'll come back to that.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be back on that for sure. So anyway, they do go and talk to him. He's cool with it. And he gives them the files. They bring them, or they send them to me. And all the while, like, or in that initial meeting, I'm like, send me some references, kind of what you guys are thinking and what you want it to sound like. And like any type of like feel, direction, or, anything that you've got. This was the first red flag that I didn't really view as a red flag at the time. In hindsight, it was waving pretty strongly.
Gotcha.
They were all over the place on their references. And so this is a 4-piece band. Each one of the members had a different reference that wasn't like the others. I mean, some of them were in a similar genre, but they weren't consistent or cohesive on what their references were. So they had a lot of references, which is not good. You need to watch out for that, because what that means is if they want it to sound like 4 or 5 different things, then it's probably not going to sound like any of those things. Correct. Because you're not going to be able to realistically make it sound like that many different things. You need to find one is fantastic. If we can get to 1, that's awesome. If you can get to 2, that's fine. 3, you got to kind of make a hierarchy here, because you're only going to be able to go in really one direction. Right. So, like, it's like, think about this. Like, if you have a target on a tree, if you throw something at it, only one tree, you might be able to hit that. But if you have 2 targets on 2 trees, but you are only given 1 dart, how are you going to hit both of those?
Not possible.
Right.
Yep.
So that's kind of the way that I should have looked at it at that point. But I thought to myself, well, they're young, like, they're just having a hard time coming up with it. I'll just kind of steer the ship in a good direction, and we'll maybe it'll be okay, right? Now, caveat here, they sent me the rough cuts, and I listened to that, and I was like, okay. And then I asked them, like, what did they, is there anything they didn't like about what they have, or is it done with the recording? And they're like, yeah, I think we just want it to be like, we feel like it could be a little fuller, or maybe there's some other instrumentation that we could put into some of the parts to fill it out, or just add some layers, right? I'm like, okay, cool. It was one of the songs was relatively long, so it did get into some instrumental sections that, like, well, if nothing else changed, it would be a little repetitive, right? So it needed something to come in or out to keep it interesting.
Right.
So that means that we needed to do some more recording before we get into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so we set up, I think, 2 sessions, 2 short kind of sessions. We added some guitar layers to both of the songs. And then we added some synth to both of the songs. And the synth really took it over that. Like, they were super stoked on that. They were like,
Nice.
it really changed the song. It turned into one of the main parts, that part that we added. And so it was super cool, and they really liked it. I was into it. And so that helped a lot. That helped get that song way farther along. So then from there, after we had those 2 short little sessions, it was on me to start working on the mixes. And I did so promptly. And now, here's another red flag situation that we can throw into this. This story is going to be full of them. So I asked them about their timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they wanted it out by a certain date. And that date at the time was, I think, 6 weeks away
Oh,
or
gosh.
something like that when they first contacted me.
Jeez.
Yeah, which, to some that may sound like, oh, that's plenty of time, but it's not.
Right.
In
Especially if you're tracking more parts.
If you're stacking more parts, like in the studio world, things take time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're usually never working on one project at a time.
Right.
And so prime example here at Hourglass, I'm usually working on anywhere from like 4 to 8 projects at a time in varying different sizes. And I'm usually booked out about 6 to 8 weeks, right? Now, I can squeeze some little things in, but you can't come to me or to anyone in that scenario that's in a similar situation with a deadline and hope to be able to hit it. I'm going to try to do whatever I can, but you need to dissect these deadlines a little bit further.
Right.
This deadline was arbitrary.
Mm.
There was no real reason why it had to be this date. There wasn't. Now, deadlines are not necessarily always a bad thing, but I don't prefer working on them most of the time. I think it's good to set your own personal deadline for yourself to keep yourself accountable and so to keep yourself moving at a decent speed. But working on someone else's deadline in the artistic realm can be kind of hindering
It can.
to the
Mm-hmm.
project. You can cut some corners that could have made it a little bit better if you just had a little bit more time.
Yep.
So anyway, there was no like CD release party or show release party that was already scheduled, because that's a reason why you would have a deadline. Certainly wasn't any label, breathing down the neck saying, hey, we got to have it out by this time so we can do this and the tour and all this. There wasn't like that. This is a young independent band.
Mm-hmm.
The deadline was completely arbitrary. So I was like, all right, guys, like I'm going to do my best to do this for you and try to hit this deadline, but I can't make any promises. And I was upfront about that. But in the back of your mind, when someone tells you that and they're your new client, you want to try to do everything you can to make them happy.
For sure.
Right? And you should. But sometimes that can cause issues.
Mm-hmm.
So watch out for that. Like, I'm not saying don't take the project if there is a deadline on it, but definitely have conversations, be realistic. And then what I should have done that I didn't do was I should have given myself some more grace to not hit that deadline, because I tried to hit it because I wanted to make them happy, and it brought more stress on me.
Mm.
And towards the closer and closer we got to the deadline, the worse that it felt to try to fix what was going on. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail why it became an issue, but anyway, so watch out for those kind of things. So I'm working on this, working on these mixes, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Fast forward, I send the mixes out to them, and okay. So here's a little caveat. So I do a flat rate for mixing and mastering, right? So I usually don't have a cap on revisions, right? Now, some people treat that differently. I know, John, you do something a little different, but um, in my mind, like most of the time, revisions will hit around revision number 3 or 4, and that's usually when we're done. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's very average, very normal. Sometimes it'll go to 5, and maybe there's like one little thing to turn down. Occasionally it goes to 6, similar thing, maybe one little thing to change, but like the bulk of the revisions are knocked out between, mix 2, 3, and 4, right?
Right.
Mix 1 is the one that I send out to them, so that's when they're of course hearing it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so then mix 2 is usually the most of the changes of everything that they're hearing, and then it gets smaller and smaller, as it should, right? So I didn't, I don't put a cap on that. That was a bad idea in this
Oh
situation.
no.
This is what it really came to bite me. So fast forward, we get into it. Now, we are all local in this situation. This was another problem, but I work with this software called FilePass, and it's fantastic software. You can send your large files, WAV files out, totally lossless, great quality. They can stream it on their phone or computer or wherever, and it lays the song out in waveform view, and they can see the timeline, and you can make comments at different points in time. Um, Very handy to have in a mixed revision situation. And you can even get in there and people can, put their name and say who says what, which is
Nice.
great,
Yep.
right? And so so I explain them how that works, as I do with everybody that I send mixes out to. And I say, hey, when you hear something you want to change, go to the timestamp and mark it and say what you want me to adjust. And then once everybody is, got their notes in there, then I'll go back through and I'll make the adjustments, and then we'll work through the mixes from there. Okay, so send out those first mixes. They go through, they listen to them uh, very quickly. Now this is not uncommon, and maybe you can comment on this a little bit, John. But when I send mix out to an artist and they start commenting and replying on the mixes either the same day or the very next morning, it's a little bit of a red flag to
Mm-hmm.
me. Because what that tells me is they may have only listened to it one time before they decided that they wanted to change this, and this.
Right.
Now, does that mean that those changes are invalid? No, definitely not. Those changes could hold through, but I say in my messages when I send it out, you should listen to it several times in this place, like in your car,
Mm-hmm.
in your home stereo situation, whatever that may be for you, and in your headphones. At least those 3 places a couple of times.
Right.
And then do the comments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever, like I said, whenever I send it out and a couple hours later or later that evening, they come back with more, I'm like, how many times did you guys listen to this, right?
Right.
So anyway, so that's like sometimes you have to take some of those comments with a grain of salt because you know that they didn't really give it much time or thought
Yep.
after they just popped it out there. So anyway, the comments come back in, and I'm trying to stick on this deadline, so I'm working on these revisions probably the next day. And there's quite a few, there's probably 15 or so on each song, something
Mm.
like that, which some of them are conflicting,
Right.
right? One's like, turn this up, one's like, turn this down. And it's like if you do one of those things, that you would achieve the same goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of them you will cancel each other out, but you kind of have to, learn how to read through some of those things and try to figure out what they're thinking like that. Anyway, that kind of comes back around too. So this process happens. Fast forward a little bit. I'm trying to stick on this deadline, so I'm trying to crank this out for him pretty quickly. So I do the second round, I think the next day for both the songs, and send it back out to him. Similar situation. They fire back like later that evening or early the next morning. Now we're on to number 3. Not as many changes, probably down to 10 or 8, something like that. Like, it's going the way that it should,
Mm-hmm.
but the process repeats again, as I would expect it. And now, basically, long story short, is we end up on mix number 13
Oh, jeez.
for one of the songs.
Yes.
We finished one of the other ones, I think, on number 7 or 8, which, that's on the very far end right there at that number. But 13 is just absurd.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't go that far.
Yeah.
Something is not right.
Right.
If it's gone that far.
That's what I often refer to as mix revision hell.
Yes.
You're just stuck in it.
And that's how I felt. And to give a little bit of insight of how this happened, this is not even the main part of the story, but I told you this is going to be a long episode. This is the precursor to what really went sideways.
Right.
And so we're at 13 on this one song. They finally sign off on, we'll say 7 or 8 on the other one. They did sign off on 13 on that one, but let me rewind a little bit. So on the one that made it all the way to 13, this was me like trying to hit this deadline. And like I said, they would get a new mix every day, sometimes 2 in the same day. I would work on it in the morning, send it to them. They would listen to it once probably, and then write their comments and then send it back. And then I would do another mix before I left the studio that same day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was moving at a very quick pace. And so you can kind of see how it kind of went out of hand. But to give you a little insight, some of these comments, once we got past like 6 or 7, we're only having 1 or 2 comments each revision. So, it's not a lot of time or work, but of course I got to pull it up. I got to, make the adjustment. I got to print the new mix. Like each time it takes time, right? And, I've charged my flat rate. So I'm like really eating into my, dollar per hour situation here, which, at the end of the day, I just want the client or the artist to be happy. And if I have to go the extra mile to get there or do something that's, a little beyond what, I would expect to do, I'm totally happy to do that. But we're breaching into a little far, to the point where I probably should have asked for a little additional compensation for the amount of hours I was spending doing this, right? And don't be afraid to do that. It can be hard. I ended up not doing that because I kind of have a rule. If I didn't talk about it before I started, I'm not going to spring something on somebody like that. I'm just going to suffer through it. And then next time we'll have a conversation.
Right. No surprises.
Yeah, no surprises. If there is a next time. So anyway, I'm firing back these mixes. Some of them are like, "Hey, can we turn this down?" And then the next mix would be like, "Nah, it was good. Let's turn it back up." Like it was that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So we're going back to where we've been. Like it was probably done at mix, 9, but we ended up at 13. They're just trying things, and that was part of the problem. And they admitted it because we talked about this afterwards. They're like, "Yeah, we were a little all over the place. We weren't all really on the same page about what we wanted, and we probably should have thought or listened to it and thought about it a little bit more before we kept commenting." I was like, "Yeah,
yep,
all right."
Sounds like a good plan.
Sounds like a good plan because we had so after that process, after they finally signed off and we settled up, I gave them the pre-master file so they could take it off to get mastered. We had a little conversation and kind of a come to Jesus situation. Like, hey, I'm happy with the songs, and I hope you guys are too. And they said, yeah, we're really happy with the way that they turned out. But I was like, it really took us a long time to get to where we landed, and it didn't need to be like that. We feel like it's kind of our fault, and we would try to do things a little differently next time. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're understanding in this regard. So that was okay. Now, it was frustrating during the time, but we talked it out and we're all good, right? Okay, fast forward a couple months. Um, they reach out to me a couple months later after these songs have been out for a little while, and they're like, "Hey, we're working on a full length record, and we're thinking about getting you to record it, edit it, and mix it, do the whole jam. And then we're probably still going to send it to the guy that we got to master the last two, but we want you to do everything else from start to finish." I'm like, great. Like, they enjoyed recording here on the last two songs. We eventually got to where they wanted on the mixes.
Yep.
Cool. We've already had our kind of come to Jesus, like, hey, it's not going to end up like this time when we get to the mix phase. Like, we're going to be thoughtful and collect our comments together and not waste a bunch of time, right? And they're like, yep, we're going to do that. That's fine. And I was like, just being up front, if we get past like mix number 5, I'm probably going to have to charge a little bit extra beyond that. And now that is, I think it's okay to do that. And some people need that. If they have an unlimited amount of anything, they're liable to just run with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have to pay, or there's some sort of like, you know, skin in the game to take it to another step, they'll probably think a little bit more about it before they are willing to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense. So I had to impose that on them before we even got started, and they were okay with that, as they should be. I mean,
Yeah.
they went through that with me, and they understand what happened. So I was feeling pretty good. Thought we were okay. So we get into tracking the record a couple months later. I have another meeting with them. They come in here. We do the whole thing again. We talk about the experience of the last two, how we can do things a little bit differently. We talk a little bit more about recording, because now we're recording the whole thing. I asked them kind of, what they wanted different based from the last two songs, what kind of sounds they're looking for with each individual instrument and each individual member. We go through all that. References again are a little all over the place, but I'm getting some idea about at least what each member wanted,
Yeah.
right? And so so that went well. We get into the recording process, and things were going pretty well. We tracked out the album. I mean, this is not where any of the issues lied. The album was coming together pretty well. It was, I mean, they spared no expense. They were doing it right. We did a bunch of layers. Like, we took our time. Each member and each instrument had, ample amount of time to do what they wanted to do. It was 8 songs. They were longer songs. It was definitely full length in time amount. And everything was going well. We even talked about time frame and deadline, and they're like, we're not really in a rush this time. There's no, like, at that point they had a handful of songs already out, so they just wanted to make sure that these were the best thing that they had at the time, and wanted to take their time and do it right. Fantastic, right?
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. So that was cool. There wasn't a whole lot of super pressure on that. We had a bunch of dates scheduled, and all was well. They did start to fall behind a little bit on the schedule, but I was like, it's no big deal. Like you said, like, we'll just add some more dates at the end. And fortunately, like, I usually, with a bigger project like that, I'll build in some like cushion dates towards the end, just in case.
Smart.
Just in case they go over the estimate, because it's hard to estimate how long that's going to take to track a whole album. So I usually would build in some, so we ended up using those cushion dates, and we got it right. The only thing that we didn't do was we wanted to add some strings to a couple of the songs, and of course no one in the band played that, and so we had to hire some session players to come in and do some violin and some cello. And so we had to wait on that. That was a little bit of a process. Had to kind of find those players, work with different schedules. And so that one song didn't quite get done with the recording. But it was scheduled to be done a little bit later. And so once we finished recording all the core stuff from everything else. They even were like, I think we could do some of this at home, just save a little bit of time and some money. Are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like, if you want to record a synth at your house, the quality is not going to really change whether you
Mm-hmm.
do it here or there. So go right ahead. That's totally cool. So I start mixing. They're like, well, do we have to wait for, the strings to keep going? I'm like, no, that's its own song. So I'll start working on the other 7. And then when the time comes to do the strings, then I'll probably be done with the other 7 with the mix, or we'll be pretty far along the process. And then I'll mix the strings in once we get those, and then that song will just be last. But no problems, right? Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. We'll go for that. And so they ended up giving me, I asked them for references again at the end. I'm like, have you guys thought about like narrowing down your references a little bit? Like, give me a little direction. And like, they gave me 2 albums that, for references, that they were like, if it could sound like these 2 albums, that's kind of what we're going for.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Like, all right.
Yep.
Here we go.
Here we go.
So turns out that those 2 albums have very different productions going on. Like, they are, like, I listened to both of them several times, and it was hard to see the similarities.
Hmm.
Like, one album was very guitar and vocal heavy with very, minimal rhythm section. Of course, it was there, but it was not prominent. The other one was opposite. The rhythm section was super heavy, and the guitars were not very prominent. The vocals were, they, barely in there, right? But enough. And so, like, they're opposite kind of things, right? And so, goes back to the dart and the 2 trees,
Mm-hmm.
like where. And so as I'm getting started with this, and I keep, throughout the mixing process, I would come back to those 2 albums and listen to a couple tracks and then go back in. And when I start to find a direction, I kind of realize, or I start to think, I'm like, I don't know if this is either one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm thinking that this might be somewhere in the middle, which in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's okay,
Yeah.
because that's the middle ground between the 2 things that I was given, right? Um, nope.
Oh no.
not
Oh no.
not great. So, and then also in my mind, and like, this is something you got to be careful with, but it's something that some artists are 100% about, and then some artists are not about it. But I was thinking, like, okay, I'm kind of like trying to forge their own sound to give this new band its unique sound,
Sure.
instead of trying to copy one that's already in existence out there, right? Like, you know, little did I know they were probably more like Greta Van Fleet that wanted to be Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
We've
Yep.
all seen that similarity.
Oh yeah.
That's what they really, they wanted their sound to be that sound so
Mm-hmm.
badly. They were just married to it, basically. But there again, some of the members of the band liked that one record the most, and the other members of the band like evenly divided like that other record the most. So within the band, they were divided, and the albums were different. And so, like I said, I had a hard time hitting it because I had 2 different things to go towards, and you can only take one path, right? So I get through the mixes. I feel pretty good about it, honestly. Like, I'm feeling good. This is maybe some of the best stuff that I've done. Like,
Nice.
it's not perfect right now, but we're going to go through, like, I know there's going to be changes and revisions that are going to happen, and I'm going to get in a little bit of a break from it, and I'm going to come back to it, and I'm going to be able to, make some tweaks myself too. So, but I get it to a point, I'm like, I'm feeling good about this. I think it's time for some feedback to send it out to them. And I'm like, kind of forged their path. It's not 100% these 2 things, but I'm hoping that they're going to be into it. And I've done a lot of the effects and stuff that they wanted, so that were very specific. And I did do those things. So maybe we're going to be hitting on something, right? So I sent the 7 of the 8 songs out because remember we still got the one that hadn't been finished recording. Um, and then the very next day, I get an email from them that is basically like, "Hey, we've listened to all the mixes, and we're not really sure that we're aligned with it. We're thinking about maybe going in a different direction."
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what is going on here?
Right.
And I'm like, I have to take a step back and reread the email. I'm like, so what are they really saying?
Right.
They're basically, bottom line, I'm getting fired
Yep.
for doing the mixes, and they want to maybe take it to somewhere else to get it mixed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is going on? I mean, in my 16 years of doing this is the first time this has ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never sent out first mixes to an artist and them just not be happy with it at all. And not only not be happy with it, not even be willing to try to work on it to get it to where they're happy with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Like, that was kind of a blow, like really taken back by it. And so, but still again, we still have more recording to do on the other song.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we need to figure this out. Like, surely there's something that I could do to get this right for them. And like, I just need to be given a chance to try, right? Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so they're like, maybe we can talk about it on the phone. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And so I call the band leader up and I'm like, hey, man, like, what's going on?
What's the deal?
What's the deal? What are you not jiving with these mixes here? And I remember, like, I've spent weeks working on this. This
Mm-hmm.
is this
Mm-hmm.
is 7 fully produced songs right here. This is a lot of time
Yeah.
that's been put into it.
Gosh.
And so I've got to figure this out. This is currently like my biggest project that I'm working on. And so I talked to him and he's like, he's like, it's really tough for me to explain it, but like, it's just not exactly the direction that we were hoping to go. I'm like, okay, like, can you give me a little bit more detail? They're like, well, like maybe it's just not full enough or it's like a little empty or something. I'm like, okay, like that's something, but that's still pretty vague, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I try to dig deeper with them, but they really couldn't tell me why or
Hmm.
what they didn't like about it. And I'm starting to think, and I told them about the references. And funny fact, I ended up running into one of the members of the band like a couple weeks prior out at someone else's gig, and was just telling him I was going through the process, and I was pretty stoked on it. And it was coming out pretty good. And I was like, I'm having a little bit of trouble hitting the references exactly because I feel like they're both a little different. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's cool. We're excited to hear what you got. Um, and so I reiterated that. And I was like, what you guys gave me to go off of was, in my opinion, two kind of different things. And so I'll be honest, at a certain point after trying to hit those two targets, I decided I should maybe try to go up the middle a little bit and kind of forge a new path and give you guys kind of your own kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, they're like, I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to the other guys in the band a little bit more. Like, and I'm like, okay, this was another caveat. So from the first two songs that we ended up, happy with after a laborious process of
Mm.
revisions, we decided that we were going to start, after the first round of mixes, we were going to mix it in person together after that with the revisions so that we wouldn't get into that kind of revision hell.
Right.
Right. Which is not a bad thing to do. I mean, a lot of mix engineers never have artists in their studio because there's pros and cons, but I think a lot of them have found more cons than pros over the years, and I kind of fall into that camp too. Like when the artist is listening, they really need to be listening in their normal listening environment to
Mm-hmm.
make those decisions. Like, where do they listen to all the other music? They don't listen to it in your studio,
Right.
right?
For sure.
They listen to all the other music that they're just, jamming on, having a good time with, getting inspiration from on, in their car or in their headphones or wherever else. Like, that's where you should be making your judgment calls, I think. And I know a lot of top mix engineers do it that way. They won't have artists in the studio because of that very fact. Like when they come in the studio and they hear it, it sounds way different. And then they'll make a decision and then they'll get it back out of the studio, hear it, and they'll be like, oh, maybe that was the wrong decision. And it just wastes time,
Mm-hmm.
or it can. But in this scenario, they were having such a hard time communicating what they wanted. I figured I better just get with them in person and see if I can translate what they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to say. Because that's part of our job, to translate a feeling that an artist has into a technical move.
Right.
Right. And so anyway, that was the plan. And so I'm on the phone with them. I'm like, well, we should still try to get together in person and see if we can, work on these mixes a little bit and see if I can, steer the ship back in the direction that you guys want to go in. And he's like, yeah, he's like, okay. He's like, if you think that, we can make a big change that way, then I'm in for it, but I've got to talk to the other members of the band and kind of see, I'm only 1/4 of the democracy here, right? I've got to run this entire conversation by the rest of the band to before we can make a decision. And but just so you know, full transparency, we are considering maybe just going in another direction completely. Like,
Mm.
okay, well, I was like, just full transparency. I hope you give me a chance to correct it.
Right.
If not, then so be it. But I hope you give me the opportunity to, and it won't cost you anything more. This was part of the process. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no additional cost in this at all. So really, there's no harm, no foul,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
yeah, it'll take a little bit of time, but we might be able to, make sure you guys don't have to start over. So anyway, so we had that conversation. We talked a little bit further about, uh, what it would look like. And then, of course, we needed to talk about the recording for the other songs. We talked about that for a little while, and that was all kind of set up and was working right. But I was trying to fast track this mixing thing because I'm like, this is 7 of the 8. We got to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's no deadline, like I'd like to get right with you guys before we get too much farther in. And so anyway, so that kind of ran in circles for a little while, and I really couldn't get like a real concrete answer out of them about what the mixes weren't doing for them.
Right.
So, anyway, so we get done with that. I'm just kind of like taken back, not real sure what to think. I'm reeling, like kind of trying to think in my head, like, okay, what is going on? Why did this go sideways like this and not work out? And then I'm just waiting to hear back from their response about, are we going to take some time to work on this, or are they just going to pull the plug or jump ship, right?
Right.
Well, they end up emailing me the next morning and basically said that they just want to try a different direction completely, and
Wow.
they want the stems, and they're going to just start over on the mix. And they basically said in that they still never gave me a reason why they weren't happy with what I worked on for them,
Mm-hmm.
but they thought that they were like, it might just take too long to get to where they want to go, and that they think that it might just be too much of a headache for both me and them to continue to work on it to get it there. Now, keep in mind, they were very happy with the recording process.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So they were all stoked on that. So I was having a hard time seeing how basically not giving it a chance was an option, right? Like, why would you not try?
Mm.
But I guess, it was so far off of their vision that we just weren't seeing eye to eye on that. Like our visions for what the song should have been mixed or sounded like were too different that they
Hmm.
just didn't want to try. So
Man,
that hurt, man. That was rough.
that's oh, that just sucks.
It does because I spent a lot of time working on that
Mm-hmm.
and I was very happy with it. I thought personally it sounded good. Now, granted, I've let a couple other people listen to it and they were like, yeah, I don't see what's wrong with this. It sounds great. Like, I think it's awesome, you know?
Yeah.
But moral of that kind of situation is, it's different strokes for different folks. Like, we just didn't have the same artistic vision at the end of the day. And I should have kind of known that because we struggled so hard on the first two songs to get them to where they wanted to be, even though we did. And I asked him on the phone, I was like, hey, well, you guys were happy with the other two that we did like several months back, right? Like, I know it was a laborious process to get there, but like, we landed right. Like, you guys released them. And they're like, yeah, we were happy with that. So in my mind, I'm like, this is not too far from that. And I thought it sounded better,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yep.
But, I guess not.
Man.
They were hell bent on those two references that
Mm-hmm.
they were stuck on that and they wanted it to sound like that. And I couldn't hit both of those two things at the same time, which I don't know if anyone is going to be able to for them. So, what are some lessons to learn from this situation that I've taken away? Well, one, and this is something that I usually do in most bigger projects, but I shouldn't have mixed all 7 songs instead and then sent them all at the same time. I should have mixed one,
Mm-hmm.
sent that one song as like the guide template kind of song. Like, hey, what do we think of this? Let's work on this one, do some revisions, get it right, and then I'll use that one as my, as my like North
Yeah,
Star,
as your reference for
as
the
my
rest of
reference
them.
for
Yeah,
the
that makes sense.
yeah, instead of mixing the whole thing and then having to change all of them to like that does a couple things. One, it makes it to where you're not investing a whole lot of time up front before you get some feedback, which is a good thing. And then two, you can use that song as your reference instead of whatever other reference is, because that reference is going to be better than any other outside other artist reference that they're going to be able to give you, assuming it's a collective album, right?
Yeah.
And then the revision process for the other songs will probably be way shorter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going off of a pretty good guide,
Totally.
right? That's what I should have done. 100%. That's my biggest regret in the whole situation
Yeah.
because I spent weeks working on all of them, but it wouldn't have taken me that long to do the one song and then go through that process, and it would have sped up the rest. So that was my fault,
Mm.
100%. And I regret that. But the one thing that I guess I kind of had in my mind or in the back of my head was I've already mixed 2 songs for these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and we landed somewhere good. So I shouldn't need to do that because we've worked together before.
Right. You had a history.
We had a history. If they were a new artist, then I would try that. Or especially if I was unsure about where they wanted to go with it, which I
Yeah.
definitely was.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was a red flag.
Yeah.
But like that's not always the case. I will say like when I have like a very clear picture of what I know artist wants and they're very good at communicating it, then sometimes I will just work on the whole thing because I mean everybody has a different workflow and process, but like I'll work on one song, feel like I get it right, then I'll move on to the next one, kind of use that one as a little bit of a template and then kind of back and forth from one all the way to the end. And then I'll go back to the first one, comb through that one again, same thing, second, third, fourth, all the way through and then maybe even one more time. So like none of them are done until they're all done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's just kind of a workflow that I built up over time if I know what I'm going for or
Yeah.
what the artist wants. And that's worked out fine in the past. But if you're a little unsure what the artist wants, not a bad idea to just start with one.
Yep.
and
Yep.
then go with that one. Because if I would have done the one and they're like, oh, well, not quite exactly what we wanted, maybe we should just go in a different direction, I would have only lost,
Yeah.
less than 10 hours.
Yep.
It wouldn't have been a big deal. Now, like, here's the thing. I couldn't charge them for the mixes because I just wouldn't feel right
Mm-hmm.
about charging someone for something that they ultimately weren't happy with and that they weren't ever going to use.
Right.
Right. And I mean, personally, I feel like that's the right thing to do. Now, some people may not feel that way. I mean, I put in weeks worth of work. Maybe I should be compensated for that, or at least for some of it, right? Maybe half. Who knows? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've had conversations with other engineers and be like, dude, I would have charged them for that.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just couldn't do that. I just didn't feel right about that. So it was a loss for me.
Man.
And I guess it was, I mean, no real monetary loss for them, but time, I guess, was lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. That was a tough situation. And then the story continues a little bit
Oh, no.
farther.
Oh, no.
It doesn't get worse. It gets better after
Okay.
this. So that's the bottom. So then from there, I'm like real introspective and reflecting on the whole project and trying to figure out like what really went wrong, what all was my fault, what was maybe out of my control a little bit, and trying to separate those things out so that I can learn from this situation and hopefully grow and not make those things happen again or go down those paths in the future with other artists and clients. And so as I was doing that, I started to think about the first two songs again that we did months back. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, I wonder if something happened like this with such and such engineer that worked on those two songs, because basically what happened to him is exactly what just happened to me.
Yeah.
They told that guy that they wanted to take the recordings and go get it mixed somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And they just told me they wanted to take the recordings and go get it mixed somewhere else.
Yep.
So I'm like, wait a second. This is a repeat situation here.
I was wondering about that.
Yes. So it did come back around. And like I said, I'm friends with this guy. I know him. There wasn't any hard feelings whenever that happened, because I made sure that they asked him about it before we got going. So I knew that I could call him and talk to him about it, and he would be honest with me because we were cool. And I did. And it turns out he had the same problems that I had.
Man. Okay.
Yeah. So what happened, it wasn't, for what I was led to believe was that they wanted to get someone else to mix it, which I thought at the time was because they just wanted a different perspective on it. But they had already tried mixing it with him, and it got to the same point. Like he said, even like that they went through several rounds of revisions before the band was like, hey, I don't think this is working out for us.
Wow.
Yeah. So he even got farther down the line, more time wasted, before they jumped ship and restarted.
Jeez.
So it seems like a little bit of a pattern here. Like, I wonder what's going to happen to the next guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And
whenever I was able to talk to him about that, like, I mean, it was a little different situation, and then it was a decent long time ago at that point for him. So it was a little fuzzy for him to remember all the details, but the longer we talked, the more he could kind of share about how it happened, and it was almost identical of what happened to me. And so that really made me feel better, because it was like, and it made him feel better too. Like, we definitely bonded over that, because we both realized that it wasn't really totally our fault, that it seemed like a problem that the band was having, that they just didn't know what they wanted their sound to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were so aimless that they couldn't make a decision, and it meant that they were never happy with anything that they got because they didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah. That band may not be around very long.
They might not be.
Honestly.
That album may not ever come out, honestly. I mean, there's a chance. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be curious to see as the months go by and see what happens. But that's a problem. Like if you don't really know what you want, or if you're in a band where your bandmates have two different opinions or too far apart opinions, you need to take a step back and look at that and be like, hey, how are we ever going to progress if we can't agree on what we
Yeah.
want? You know?
Yep.
So
That's a killer of bands
it is.
when people just can't agree.
A lot of bands break up over artistic differences.
They sure do.
Right?
They sure do.
So
Man.
yeah, man, that was a tough one.
Well, I'm sorry that happened, and I've heard of stuff like that happening. I've never personally experienced it, but
Yeah, I mean, like I
man.
said, I've been doing this for 16 years, and that's the first time it's ever happened to me. I've been, you know, pretty successful and happy enough with most of my clients that there's never been. Now, some mixes take longer than others, and there are some differing opinions on where it should go. And I will concede most of the time on that and let the artists go in direction as long as I just think it's just not a completely bad idea, right? But and that's hard to do. But I've never been basically totally abandoned and fired,
Right.
for lack of better
Right.
words.
I mean, you were
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah, I was
Like they hired
fired.
you for a job and then they fired you.
Yep, they hired me for
Jeez.
2 jobs. I passed the first one, and I got fired on the second one. So it was kind of rough, man. But like I said, learned a lot from the scenario, from the situation, and realized that I don't think I was fired because the quality was poor and I didn't do I didn't do a good job. It just wasn't the job that they wanted done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And that's something to keep in mind. Like it definitely hurt, and it kind of hurts my confidence a little bit when that happened. But the more I reflect about it, and especially after talking to the other engineer friend, it was like, well, it wasn't because it was bad. And then letting other people listen to it, and they're like, yeah, it's actually really good. It just wasn't what they wanted.
Right.
Is what it comes down to. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't what they wanted.
And they probably don't even know what they want.
It sounds like they don't. And they
Mhm.
probably won't ever get it because you can't get what you want if you don't know what it is.
Yeah. You got to be able to communicate it.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Agree and communicate.
Exactly. And then another little ray of sunshine that came out is I was mixing another smaller EP at the time, and sent that out, and they wrote back, "This is fantastic. Mix 1 is approved. We don't have any changes."
I love when that happens.
Right? So it's like that further just showed me that the artists that I was working with, we just didn't have the same vision.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because I don't do a good job. It wasn't, anything like that. It wasn't because we had personal issues with each other. It was that our artistic tastes were just too different, and we just shouldn't have been working together.
Yep.
So.
And I guess, if you do it long enough, something like that's bound to happen. But man, I sure do hate it for you. I sure do hate it.
Yeah, it is. You're not going to be able to get through a career like this totally unscathed, I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
But you just have to, take it in stride, take some time to reflect, see what you can learn from the situations, and, turn those small failures into bigger successes later on down the line.
Totally.
Right?
Yep. So. I think you're taking the right approach with it. I think that's the only thing to do.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's just let it roll into the next time and inform your decisions.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So I know this is a long one, but do you have any type of scenarios you'd like to talk about, John, that might be a little
Nothing
different?
that crazy.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
No.
Or maybe just even some advice to share with some of our listeners.
Sure, yeah.
Any which way.
I would say the thing here's what I can do. I would say, thank you for sharing your story, because one of the things I just took away from it was, not to just go ahead, like if I'm doing an album, not to just go ahead and do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Start with one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think in my mind I know that, but I've definitely done a whole album's worth before.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
You're just like,
because you're just cranking along and you get
cracking.
stoked on it and you're like, yeah, this is great. Like I'm nailing it. Like things are sounding really good. Let's just keep going.
Yep.
But I think I just changed
Yeah.
in this moment. I
Yeah,
changed
yeah.
my mind. I'm like, nope, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to go with one and then just,
Yeah.
keep it going from there.
Yeah, I kind of broke one of my own rules. I mean, I even do that with recording. Like if I get a new artist that I've never worked with that contacts me, I will start with one song with them.
Yeah.
And we'll record it, mix it, or whatever. If I'm not mixing it, we'll just we need a one song relationship to start.
Yep.
And if it goes well, we'll talk about doing more.
Yep.
We can do the rest of the album at that point. And that works out really well because it also gives the artist some experience working with me or with the other engineer or whatever together.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives us a point that once we've basically finished one from start to finish all the way through to completion, and we can look back on that and see like, is there anything we would do differently? Could we make it better
Mm-hmm.
if we would have kind of spent a little bit more time on this in the recording process?
Yeah.
Or, maybe if we would have edited this a little bit differently, it could have been better. And, or the mix, any of those options, right? It gives you a little like hindsight point.
It does. Yeah.
Right.
The only situation I can think of where it's gone sideways with an artist would be way back when, like, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was really like starting to like pursue being a mix engineer.
Yeah.
Which, if you're just tuning in, if this is your first episode, that's really not where I want to live anymore.
Yeah.
I really love mastering, like in the studio environment. If I could just master, that'd be awesome. But I still do mix for people.
Mhm.
It's just I've discovered what I love is the final step. What I love is like getting it across the finish line and enhancing to that sonic intent and getting it done, ready for distribution. But at the time, I was really focused on mixing, and I had this guy. He was actually a friend of mine, and he was also an artist. And he'd been working with this other guy in Nashville who'd produced several of his songs and mixed them and mastered them. This guy was kind of a one-stop shop. And anyway, yeah. But he came over to my house one time, and I was asking him how it was going, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm just not really stoked on what this other guy is doing for me on this song, and like I don't know, I feel like he charges a lot of money, and I'm never super happy with the finished product." And so he let me listen to it, and I thought they were great. Like I thought the guy was doing a good job, but I was like, "Well, what would you want differently?" And he's like, "I don't know, it's just the vibe." The vibe.
Red flag.
Yeah, now I know.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah, like I hear what you're saying. Like I'd be willing to give it a crack for you, if you want. And because he had this new song that he had recorded in like his home studio, and he wanted me to mix it. And so so he was like, you know what, let's do it. Like I know you. I feel like I don't even know this other guy. Like let's go for it. And so anyway, so I get the tracks from him and do a pass at it. Had to tune the vocals, had to do a lot of editing work. So I had to like tune the vocals, and he had used just like he sent me the MIDI files, which like not a lot of people do. Usually
Right.
like they bounce them out or whatever. And so yeah, he sent me the MIDI tracks, and the piano that he was using, I just thought it was like a stock piano sound. And I was like, this doesn't sound great. So I found something I thought worked a little bit better, changed it out, and, at the time looking back on it, there was one thing that I did that I definitely shouldn't have done. But anyway, so I send him off mix one or whatever, and he listens to it, and he gave it about a day. Like he knew how to do it,
Nice.
how to listen. And so then he shoots me a text. He's like, "Hey, can I call you real quick?" I'm like, "Sure." So he calls me, and he's a super nice guy, but he basically was like, "This is not even remotely close
Oh no.
to like what I was going for with this song." He's like, "You changed my piano out. I wanted that piano tone."
Ooh.
One of the things, and this was, this is a young engineer's move, a young mix engineer's move. I used way too much reverb on the track. It was a super exposed track. So like, it was literally just piano and his vocal.
Oh.
So like piano layers and then vocal layers. And I basically I thought he was going for, and I hadn't asked for a reference. Again, this was like, there was a lot that I did wrong. I thought he was going for this like really kind of like spacey, like ethereal kind of a sound just based off of the way that the song was written. And it was literally the opposite. And so anyway, he was like, yeah, he's like, I hired you because you're a way better mix engineer. He said this on the phone. I remember. He said, I hired you because you're a way better mix engineer than I am. But like, this is just not at all.
It's not the
It's not it.
not the path.
So I took all of what he said and I was like, man, I'm so sorry. I hear exactly what you're saying now. Wish we'd had this conversation up front. I didn't ask enough questions. You know, let me hear what you're going for. And he sent me a reference.
Okay.
And
Now we're talking.
yeah. And so, because the only reference I had before was he vocally told me like, I want it just to sound like I'm playing piano in like a big like auditorium.
Just a description, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, got that back and totally changed it up. It was totally different than what I had in my head that this thing should sound like. And then, yeah, but then I did exactly what he wanted and sent it back to him and was like, sorry about the reverb, bro, along with everything else. And second revision, he's like, this is perfect.
Nice. There you go.
Like, totally perfect. And, it's out in the wild now.
Good.
And yeah.
It's nice that he gave you a chance.
He gave me a chance, man.
Mm-hmm.
So totally different than yours. He did give me a chance. It wasn't just like a nope.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Obviously, you could tell he's a little more experienced, and he's been through it before, and he knows that you're when you're dealing with people, it's not you can't. No one's a mind reader, right?
Right.
So like you got to give people a little bit of grace to catch up with what you're thinking, especially if you're either in your situation not really given much to go off of, or in my situation, very poorly described and given two opposite things to go off of.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway, that's a similar story. Mine turned out okay. I wish that yours did.
Well, that's okay. It is what it is, and like I'm moving on, and it's fine, and lessons have been learned, and like I said, costly lessons, but
sure,
still learned a lot from the situation, and I wish the best for them. I hope that they are able to find what they want with the tracks. Like I said, I mean, the recordings I thought were good. They were very happy with them. So I hope that, they do turn into something someday and they are able to find what they want. But I'm curious. I think it's going to be a hard journey for them because they don't know what they want. Right. So we'll see where it ends up.
Yep.
It may never see the light of day. Who knows? We'll see. Man. But that happens.
It does.
It's this is not, I'm not the only one out there that this has happened to. I know that, and far worse things have probably happened. So, anyway, we'll take it for what it is, and learn and move on.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's probably a good place to kind of wrap it up.
I think so.
If you stuck in this long, thanks for listening, especially to me ranting on about this story. But I hope it was helpful. I hope that someone, can hear this and maybe, visualize or be on the lookout for some of those red flags that I brought up throughout my story. And I certainly know I will be. So hopefully there's some good takeaways. And same with John's. There's obvious, things to look out for, and so hopefully tough situations can be avoided in the future.
Totally.
So,
well, what are you? Let's just finish up with what are you working on?
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
Obviously not a 8-track album.
Not that one. Nope.
Oh man.
But that's okay. No, I'm working on some other great great albums and EPs. I'm still working on the Fontanelles. We actually finished up the recording process last night.
Nice.
So now it's moving on into the mix phase, of course, and I'm super stoked on it. They are too. We've been working on this one for a long time. They've added songs along the way, and it's really turned into a much bigger album, and I think it's going to be really good.
Sick.
So I'm very excited about that one. I'm working on some mixes for Jim Ellis. We finished recording all that a couple of weeks back, and I'm in the mix process, and that's going very well. And then I've got a live sound gig coming up where I should have talked about this last episode actually, but I'll be going to another venue and recording the show for a radio hour that they're doing. Yep. for the local WHQR Soup to Nuts Live radio
Nice.
hour. And luckily, in this situation, I'm able to get with the house engineer ahead of time and go over the equipment and see like what we're working with and make a good game plan, which is not always the case,
Nope.
right? But luckily, we're friends, so should be a good one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
How about you, man?
Yeah, I've been traveling a ton. Was in New Orleans all last week, doing audio for this big software company's like annual conference. We were in a big old ballroom and yeah, tons of load in. I mean, there was a lot of gear on this show. Like my back still hurts.
I bet.
It was a ton.
Yeah.
And one thing that we haven't really talked about, but one of the things that will get you called back on shows is just chipping in and just helping out. And long story short, we had a really huge LED wall, and even though audio is my discipline, I do video work too, and
Yeah.
a little bit of lighting as well. And so we basically didn't have. It's not that we didn't have enough help. It's just we were kind of down to the wire on this loadout. And so I wound up basically like disassembling an entire gigantic LED wall myself and packing it up
Wow.
in nationwide cases and getting it out there. And that's what kind of broke my back.
I bet.
It was a lot. But then, flew home, worked with a really great crew. There's this one crew I've been working with a lot lately, and it's a good camp, And then they called me up. Well, actually, no, we talked about it on that same show. There was Mike Pence was coming to Raleigh for a press conference, and they needed an A1. And so they're like, would you want to do that? So I woke up at like 3:30 a.m. on Monday and drove to Raleigh with a bunch of equipment and unloaded it, set it up, and mixed a press conference. And
Cool. Yeah.
packed it up and headed home. So
That's
it's
it.
kind of what I've been doing. And, other than that, this week I'm just doing some video editing and
Good.
that's what's going on.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for sticking in with us on this episode. A little bit of a heartfelt, juicy one.
For sure.
And yeah, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, give us a like and a sub to the channel, and leave us a comment if you've been in a similar situation to mine or John's or anything different. Like, we just kind of like to hear, what's going on. Not every project works out, and not every artist is right for every engineer. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure that out.
Yep.
And sometimes it has to be done the hard way. So we'd love to hear from you. Check us out. Leave us a comment. Like I said, consider maybe becoming a channel member, and check us out on Patreon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for sharing, Trent. I know that's fresh for you, but I learned a lot. I think our listeners probably have learned a lot.
Cool. I hope so.
That makes it, I guess, sort of worth it in some ways. So
Yeah. Glad to share.
Cool.
For sure.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, steady the path.
Steady the path.